welcome to another exciting episode of the Tigers. Then we have a very special guest with us today, a man named Mr. Sheldon Lettich. He is a filmmaker best known for his work in action genre, especially during the late 80s and 90s. He's been a writer, director, and sometimes producer of several well-known movies, including Bloodsport, Lionheart, Double Impact, Only the Strong, Legionnaire, The Order, and Rambo 3. So, welcome to the Tigers Den, Mr. Lettich. It's a great honor to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. And wow, I do have quite a few credits. I was listening to you reading them off. I don't generally read those off to people. When people ask me, "Oh, what movies have you done?" and I'll give them like the top three. But yeah, there's actually quite a few that I've been involved with, and quite a few that I don't have credits on that I also worked on. So yeah, it's been a long career. It's been about I've been doing this for about 35 years now.
Yeah, wow. That's quite an accomplishment. How did you get started in filmmaking and writing your films?
Well, I was interested for many, many years. Originally, I wanted to be a cinematographer, and I went to the American Film Institute. I was a commercial photographer before then. I was making a living taking photographs. And I went to the American Film Institute as a cinematography fellow. Not, they also had directing fellows and screenwriting fellows, but I was strictly there for cinematography. But while I was there, I used to go monitor the screenwriting classes, and I ended up having to help. I would do the cinematography on some of the student productions there, so I ended up helping a lot of the directing students make their little movies, and learned quite a bit doing that, and actually ended up helping them more than I needed to. So I started getting a feeling that hey, I'm not too bad at this directing stuff, and uh, there were most of the writing students there had degrees from colleges, master's degree in creative writing and screenwriting and all of this. And I had no previous training, but I just had kind of a knack for doing it, for writing. And that's true for a number of others in my business too. Well, Quentin Tarantino is a really great example. He
Mhm.
never even went to college, just started writing, and he just had a knack for it. And I found that I had a knack for it in some respects also, especially for writing action movies. So I started writing screenplays while I was at AFI. I got it. I took some classes. I realized I should give this a try. Started writing screenplays, and eventually I got the screenplays to people who were in the movie business. It's a long story, but that's what ended up happening. I got an agent. The agent got me some jobs. The agent actually introduced me to Frank Dukes.
Mm.
So that was how I got started with him.
Mhm.
Uh, Frank had written a novel called The Last Rainbow, which is a Vietnam novel. And I read this, I was introduced to this agent named Harold Moskowitz, who had read one of my screenplays, liked it, wanted to take me on as a client. And he knew I was a Vietnam veteran. So Frank's book was a story that took place in Vietnam, The Last Rainbow. And it was 1,000 pages long.
Mm.
And Harold thought he could probably sell this and get it published as a book if it was cut in half. So he asked me if I could take a look at it and if I could find a way to cut it down, well, basically take 500 pages out. And then it would be a 500-page novel that he could sell.
Mhm.
So I read the book, and I thought it was pretty well written. That Frank is actually not a bad writer, which is something that he should have pursued even more.
Mm.
And so I was kind of curious, like, who is this guy? And I gave him a call. I got his number from Harold. I gave him a call,
Mm-hmm.
And he was teaching martial arts at the time. He had a dojo in North Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
Duke's Ninjutsu, and we decided to get together at his school, and that's how I first met him. Was at his martial arts dojo. So basically, I had proof there that he really was doing martial arts at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories he told me were fabricated. You know, there was no Kumite. He didn't win.
Yeah.
He was not the first non-Asian to win the Kumite. None of that was true. But
Right.
he had a great imagination, and he did know something about martial arts, and he was teaching people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how pretty much that was the genesis of how Bloodsport came about.
Oh, okay. So, what was it like making that iconic movie, Bloodsport? Well, of course, with Jean-Claude Van Damme, you've got Bolo Young, among
Right,
others. That's Muhammad Casey that went on to play Tong Po.
right, yeah. Um, well, it's a long, long story and quite involved, actually. And uh, I have a book that was written about me here. It's called From From
Vietnam.
Vietnam to Van Damme. I don't
Yeah,
know if
yep.
you've read it, but that's got a lot of the details. I can get into some of them, but
Yeah.
basically, Frank and I kind of hit it off because we were both former Marines. Uh, I was a uh, real Marine with the Fleet Marine Force. I was in Vietnam for a year.
Thank you for your
Frank,
service.
what's that?
I said, thank you for your service.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, Frank was a Marine Corps reservist, so he knew a little bit about the Marine Corps, enough to convince me that he was the real deal, that maybe he was in Vietnam. So I believed all of this. And I didn't know enough about martial arts back then. And there was no way to check up on his stories because uh, there was no internet back then either. So there was an article in Black Belt magazine called Kumite, A Learning Experience. It was basically Frank relating to the editor of Black Belt
Hmm.
his experiences in the Kumite. Turned out it was all fabricated, but he fooled the editor of Black Belt magazine, which is not an easy feat to do. This guy John Stewart was the editor. He's the one who wrote the article based on Frank's stories, and it was a fascinating story actually about this Kumite held every 5 years, all the best martial artists from all over the world, and I bought it, and John Stewart bought it, and then one day Frank told me, well, the matches were very bloody because it was no holds barred. They didn't wear gloves, nothing like that. So we had a nickname for it, which was Bloodsport,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I heard that word, and I said, "Wow, Frank, that's a great title for a movie." And not only that, but these stories you've been telling me about the Kumite and winning the Kumite and all these fighters from all over the world, that sounds like a movie to me.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much where the whole Bloodsport idea came from. But like I said, there was no way to verify any of it
Of
because I was
course.
just taking Frank's word for it. And the fact that the editor of Black Belt magazine took his word for it also and published this article,
Sure.
Kumite, a Learning Experience. So we we ended up making a little movie together. Uh, I had worked on a play called Tracers, which was about the Vietnam War. It's a
Hmm.
play I wrote with like seven other Vietnam veterans who were also actors, and they ended up acting in the play. The play was staged, did quite well all over the world, actually. And
Hmm.
there was one scene I wrote for it that I really liked that the director did not want to stage because it was a bit too complex. It involved battles, helicopters, and all of this. So it wasn't something we could do on a low budget stage in a very, very low budget house, Odyssey, the Odyssey Theater Group, I believe it was called. So we didn't put that that piece into the play, but I couldn't get it out of my head. I really liked it, and I'd wanted to. I'd gotten the directing bug at AFI.
Hmm.
I actually made a short film there that I shot on video, which I thought turned out pretty good. So I kind of got bit by the bug, and I really wanted to make another movie. I wanted to make a movie, but to shoot something in 16 millimeter and make it like a real movie.
Yeah.
And so I wrote up this scene. I turned the scene into a little screenplay, about 20 pages long. And I showed it to Frank, and I said, "Hey, Frank, I want to shoot this thing." And Frank had wanted to be an actor at the time. He thought he was movie star material. And he did have kind of a Tom Selleck air about him at the
Mm-hmm.
time. He was a good-looking guy, kind of, tall, and could do some martial arts moves. So I thought, well, Frank, if we make this little movie, if you help me get this thing set up, you help me produce this, I'll let you play the lead role in it. And he liked that idea, so he helped me put it together. And we put this little movie together, and we shot it at. I actually got permission from the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Being a former Marine kind of helped
Hmm.
me. I went down to Camp Pendleton, pleaded with them, and they let me shoot at Camp Pendleton for free.
Yeah.
Um, and we were able to do all kinds of crazy stuff with, we were able to fire guns with blanks. We did some explosions.
Hmm.
And I even got the Marines to give me a helicopter for 2 hours. It was a big
Wow.
ass CH-46. We're not talking about a Huey. This is like it was called a I think they called it a Sea Stallion at the time.
Hmm.
And it was a big twin rotor helicopter. So
Hmm.
they let me use that for a few hours.
Yeah.
All
Cool.
this for free, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so we made this little movie. And this is like 1983.
Hmm.
So you didn't shoot on iPhones back then, okay? There were no iPhones.
Right.
Uh, if you wanted to shoot a movie, you had to get film. You had to shoot it on 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter. So I rented a bunch of 16 millimeter equipment and had to buy film.
Hmm.
Not like it is now. You've got your phone and you just record on your phone. You don't need any media. Back then you needed media, so I had to buy film. We shot the film on over 2 weekends, and then I had to put it all together. You
Yeah.
couldn't. There were no editing suites on computers. Okay, there was none of
Right.
that. Basically, if you wanted to edit, you had the 16 millimeter film on
Mhm.
reels, and you had to have a machine to
Yeah.
put the film into and put it all together, and it had to tape splices together. Um, so I rented a room at a very low budget production house in Hollywood called Movie Tech. And that's where I edited the film together.
Cool.
Uh, and we had like
Yeah.
I think the machine was called a chem. You'd put a bunch of reels on it and then you'd run them through the machine and pick where you wanted to make a cut. You had to
Mhm.
actually cut it physically, tape
Mhm.
it together, and that was how we made the movie. But
Wow.
next door to me, there was another editing room, and there was a guy named Ruben Mazzini who was in that room. He was also a former Marine, and he was editing a porno movie for a
Mhm.
producer named Mark DeSalle.
Mhm.
So being right next door to one another, we talked a lot of times, and I told Ruben, oh, by the way, I've just gotten hired to co-write Rambo 3 with Sylvester Stallone.
Wow.
Okay, so that kind of polished my bona fides as being a real screenwriter.
Mhm.
And Ruben told his producer, Mark DeSalle, that the guy who's writing Rambo 3 is in the room right next to me. And Mark had this idea about making a martial arts movie. He felt that different genres of movies, they would go through a cycle, they'd be popular, then they die, and then the cycle would start over again. Well, there hadn't been any martial arts movies for a while, and he thought it's time to bring martial arts movies back. And he was he was about as right can be. Okay, so he had an idea called Kickboxer, which he pitched to
Mhm.
me. He and I we went and had lunch, and he pitched the Kickboxer story, which was different than what the movie turned out to be.
Hmm.
There was
Okay.
no brother. Basically, Tong Po defeats Kurt. No, Kurt defeats Tong Po in a match in
Hmm.
Los Angeles.
Hmm.
And Tong Po wants revenge because he's been defeated by this guy. And he goes to Kurt's house that night and wants to kill Kirk. So he
Oh.
throws a kick, but Kirk's mother happens to walk into the room at the same time, and he accidentally kicks Kurt's mother in the face and kills her.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was Mark's original idea. And
Wow.
then Kurt wants to take revenge, and he goes to Thailand and sets up a fight with Tong Po.
Hmm.
Excuse me a second here.
Sure. No, that's all very interesting. I mean, because that's like behind the scenes to another iconic movie that I find to be very cool because as soon as I got done watching Bloodsport, I looked up Kickboxer because, Van Damme uh to me is one of those iconic figures that when I when I watch
He's
those movies, those
yeah.
are those are cool movies, but the message behind them is you know
Mhm. Yeah,
priceless.
and Van Damme he's unique. He's a unique specimen actually, and nobody else could have done Bloodsport and Kickboxer the way he did.
Mm.
But I'm getting to that. Okay,
Okay,
um, so Mark pitches Kickboxer to me, and I didn't really like it all that much. I especially didn't like the part about the mother being killed.
sure.
Later on, when we got around to making the movie, which I was originally supposed to direct, I'm the one who came up with the idea of, okay, look, let's get rid of the mother. What if Kurt's got a brother and Tong Po kills his brother? Okay, we all like that idea better, so that's what we went with. But now
Mhm.
back to Bloodsport. So Mark finishes pitching Kickboxer to me, and I said, okay, Mark, I've got a better idea than Kickboxer. It's called Bloodsport. Well, Mark just instantly uh, fell in love with that title. And then I started telling him about the story. Basically, there's this guy named Frank Dukes. He's a real person. He lives in LA. We can go meet him if you want. And he was the first non Asian to win this secret Kumite contest. There's an article about it in Black Belt Magazine. You can read about it. But that's the movie that I would like to write, would be Bloodsport. So I set up a meeting with Mark and Frank Dukes. We met at Mark's office in Century City, and Mark just was getting more and more interested in this idea, and he decided, yeah, I want to go for this. So he hired me to write the screenplay, and he made a deal with Frank to for the rights to his true life story. Okay, I got the contract, so that's basically the deal that Mark made. That Frank was maintaining. He maintains to this day that this whole story is true, but the story is just full of holes and was uh, pretty much everybody in the world, everybody in the martial arts world knows it's all bullshit.
Hmm.
But Mark had a piece of paper with Frank, basically saying, I've got the rights to use your true life story, and we're going to turn that into a movie called Bloodsport, which Sheldon is going to write. So basically, I wrote the screenplay, and it's a long story after that, but eventually we got it to Canon Films. Mark got it to Canon via via a guy who raised money for movies. And Canon at the time was making martial arts movies and doing well with them. They were making those ninja movies with Michael Dudikoff, and
Hmm.
they were making movies with Chuck Norris. So that was a good business model for them. And here's a martial arts movie. We had no star for it. All we had was the screenplay, no director, nothing. But Mark brought the script to them, and they liked it. They wanted to make it. So then the next step was finding somebody to play Frank Dukes. And they wanted to take their easy route with people they were already working with. So they suggested Chuck Norris. Well, Chuck's way too old to play this character. This character's in his 20s. I think Chuck was in his 50s back then.
Mhm.
Okay, well, what about Michael Dudikoff? Because we have a contract with Michael. He's been doing a lot of movies for us. Well, Michael's not a real martial artist. Because those were ninja movies, so he put on a ninja outfit. You couldn't see his face. And basically, they would have Steve Lambert doing all those ninja stunts in the
Mhm.
ninja mask. Sho Kosugi, I think, did some of those stunts. So
Mhm.
it was Steve Lambert and Sho Kosugi, but not Michael Dudikoff.
Mhm.
But for Bloodsport, we needed somebody that could be seen in the arena doing these fights and winning these fights. So who do we get to do that? And then right around the same time, just by coincidence, by the stars aligning. Hang on a second here.
Mhm. Sure.
Mark had met Menachem Golan, the head of Canon, had met Jean-Claude Van Damme, or
Mhm.
Jean-Claude kind of pushed his way into Menachem's office. Uh, but it's a long story as to how this came about. But basically, Menachem brought us Jean-Claude Van Damme to
Mhm.
be the star of the film.
Cool.
And that pretty much came together there. We had Jean-Claude. Now we had a star. The rest of it was pretty easy. The rest of it was uh, get a director. They got Newt Arnold had was basically an assistant director. He'd been an assistant director on a lot of really huge Hollywood productions. I think he was the assistant director on Blade Runner.
Mhm.
Um, and Menachem owed Newt some favors for fixing up some of his movies.
Oh,
Hang on a
cool.
second
Yeah.
again. So he promised Newt a movie to direct. And so here comes Bloodsport. So now we've got a script. We've got an actor. He's not a movie star yet, but he's an actor that will fit the role. And so he put Newt Arnold on it to direct it. And they had some kind of a production deal in Hong Kong with Charles Wang, who had a company in Hong Kong called Salon Films. And he had gotten in touch with Menachem and told him, hey, look, we can supply uh, crew, cameras, lighting equipment, everything if you shoot your movies in Hong Kong. So the first movie they decided to shoot in Hong Kong was Bloodsport.
Mhm.
So we ended up reworking the script so that we could shoot it in Hong Kong. And that's how it ended up being in Hong Kong with
Mhm.
the Forbidden City and all of that stuff.
Right.
Uh, None of which was in the original script. In the original script, we didn't even say which country the Kumite took place in. We kept it vague. But now we had a country that actually put it in, and Hong Kong ended up being a perfect place because there's a lot of fighters there, a lot of guys who've been in these Hong Kong action movies,
Mhm.
these the Shaw Brothers movies, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and because we were shooting in Hong Kong, Mark DeSalle came up with a great idea for our main villain, Chong Li. He said, "What about Bolo, the guy who was in Enter the Dragon, the villain in Enter the Dragon?" So that's how Bolo ended up being in the movie.
Oh, cool. No, that's all very fascinating history because, a lot of, when you watch an iconic movie, you're always remembering the movie as you see it, but it's always really cool and interesting to hear about how it comes together because uh I I've heard for instance like the Viking Samurai talk about Bloodsport as being like everything coming together is like being lightning striking uh together that doesn't strike twice. That's that iconic of a movie, you
Right,
know.
right.
And when I watched it, you know, I was it was New Year's and I looked at it and barring the it says true story or whatever, that it's a movie, so
Mhm.
I get that. But I watched it and I thought, that's a really cool movie. I was on the edge of my seat watching the action scenes of Jean-Claude Van Damme and these other talented fighters. And so my instructor, Seagoing Dexter Parker, the training center, he was teaching his students horse stance, right? Saying, okay, you need to be in horse stance. We're gonna work up to an hour. So in my mind, as a mental challenge to get through it, I kept referring back to this is like an internal blood sport, and I found an inspiration in the film.
What was horse stance?
Okay, so horse stance comes from the Chinese system, and it's another system. It's like the long version of the name is riding horse stance. So it's like being on a horse, but you're like sitting in a chair that's not there. So you have to get low. You have to maintain that. That's builds will, mental focus, things like that. But it can also be used for rooting and things like that in Hungar system, for example. So horse stance, you start out small and then you go up, in time if you're doing it to build endurance with your rooting and your stance work. So it's not easy to start out with, you start like 30 seconds to a minute to from a minute all the way up to an hour.
It's the stance that you have to hold, basically.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
it's part of the Chinese and martial arts training that a lot of people will do, So when when I watch the film and in my mind I'm standing there, I'm wanting to stand back up because I have to maintain that low, right? So I was
Mhm.
like, okay, um, this is my mini kumite in my mind, in my so yeah. So, and I thank you for writing the story, making it so inspirational with the characters because um, I got through that, and it helped me focus on something inspirational.
Well, there's a lot of elements that all came together to make that movie as great and as iconic as it is. Uh, it wasn't just the writing, basically. So I heard these stories and I came up with a structure that I think is a unique structure because I haven't seen it. I didn't see it in other martial arts movies before Bloodsport, where
Mhm.
basically the entire movie is about the tournament. It's all about the kumite.
Yeah,
There's no lead up to the kumite. There's no and there are some other elements in it. Basically these guys are trying to capture Frank and bring him back to the U.S. So
yeah,
that was another element that I threw in there.
sure.
But basically, the story starts with these fighters getting ready to go to the Kumite,
Yeah,
and then you see the Kumite. Frank's character wins the Kumite, and then he gets on a plane and goes home, and that's the end of the movie.
yeah,
So that was my idea for the structure of the film,
sure.
and I think it's pretty much been imitated since then. Because you look at other fight movies like
Yeah,
boxing movies, wrestling movies, and uh, generally there's a lot of other story going on first. Then you have the boxing matches, and then your lead actor wins, and then there's a whole denouement after that. But Bloodsport was just about the tournament, so that
hmm
was one element. But then there are so many other elements that make the movie great. First of all, there's Jean Claude,
hmm
and Jean Claude was really a very special, unique martial artist uh, who hadn't really been seen before. He was seen in actually before we ended up casting him. Uh, he was in No Retreat, No Surrender.
hmm
Now, when Mark DeSalle first heard about Jean Claude from Menachem, he said, "So we've got this guy named Jean Claude Van Damme. He's in this movie that just opened called No Retreat, No Surrender. Why don't you guys go take a look at it?" So Frank and I went to the local movie theater in North Hollywood and we saw that movie, No Retreat, No Surrender. We called Mark right afterwards and we said, "That's the guy, Mark. I think we found our star of this movie."
hmm
And uh, Menachem Golan at Cannon Films pretty much agreed. and they put Jean-Claude in the movie. Now, Jean-Claude, his presence in the film and the things that he could do physically were very, very unique, very special, and that added a lot to the film.
Yeah.
Then we've got Bolo Young, that adds a lot, um, and there's all these. Basically, the stars really aligned for Bloodsport and made it as special as it is.
Yeah. No. It it's you guys did you guys did it right when it happened, you know. It's really amazing.
The,
Uh
the one guy that doesn't get much credit, unfortunately, because he died shortly after making the movie,
mm,
was Newt Arnold, the director.
mm,
He had a lot to do with making that movie work
sure.
as well as it did.
Mm,
And he never got to see the success that that movie achieved. And he was responsible for it in many
yeah.
ways. Um, and look, it's got some great fight choreography too. And the fight
Mm,
choreography was by Frank Dukes and Jean-Claude Van Damme
mm,
and Michelle Kesey. Basically, they're the ones that came up with most of these fights.
mm,
And every time I watch the movie, I just can't tear my eyes away from those fights. Those fights are just they're a delight to watch.
right, yeah. No, I mean they are. It's amazing. Um I
And as
wanted
they
to
still
ask
they
oh,
still hold up nowadays. They still
yeah.
hold up today.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's no CGI. That's, of course
no
it's choreographed, but
no CGI, no wire work, no trampolines, none of that. Basically, it was all it was basically what the actors could do when the camera was rolling. Nothing done, nothing done in post production.
cool. No, that's awesome. I did want to ask you one thing about it. A lot of people have been talking about. I noticed talk about this. How did Mortal Kombat relate to Bloodsport? Because when you look at Johnny Cage in the original game, he looks a lot like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Well, obviously, Bloodsport inspired Mortal Kombat. Okay.
Yeah.
Bloodsport inspired Johnny Cage. In fact, what I heard was that originally they wanted to get Jean Claude to play that character. And he's even got the same initials, JC. And Jean Claude didn't want to do it. So they got, I'm not sure who they got to play that character, but yeah, Mortal Kombat was totally inspired by Bloodsport. Um, UFC inspired by Bloodsport. Bloodsport inspired quite. Then there were the ripoffs. There was, Blood Fist, Blood Match, Blood Game,
Yeah.
all these various iterations of Bloodsport.
Hmm. Yeah, because if you even look at going back to Bloodsport and you go to Scott Atkins movies where he did that tournament, I think his name was Boya or something.
Boyka,
Boyka. Yeah.
right.
I mean, without the spark that Bloodsport started, look where it led to, So, yeah.
Well, yeah, look, all of that is a consequence of Bloodsport. This is
Hmm.
basically Bloodsport. Really, it pretty much created its own subgenre. It
Yeah.
is a martial arts movie, but it's different than Enter the Dragon, for example.
Hmm.
Um, I've seen people say that Bloodsport's a ripoff of Enter the Dragon. Well, no, it's not. Enter the
Right.
Dragon is about cops infiltrating a drug den. I forgot the character's name, but basically this guy controls this island, and he's trafficking women, he's trafficking drugs, and Bruce Lee is some kind of a cop, and they're supposed to infiltrate the dragon. That's why they were entering the dragon. Okay,
Yeah.
Bloodsport's all about the tournament. The
Right.
tournament just happens to be the mechanism that Bruce Lee uses to enter that location um, uh, by just being a fighter. So he's going there undercover to bring down this drug lord. But there's nothing like that in Bloodsport. Bloodsport's totally about the tournament.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, the next movie that I wanted to ask you about was Only the Strong. with the capoeira fighting. How was that to make after Bloodsport, especially with is it, Paco Pietro and Mark
And Mark
Dacascos?
Dacascos, yeah. Now
Dacascos, yeah.
that um, I've got a lot more of a personal stake in because I actually directed that one. And that one, it came about. My co-writer, Luis Esteban, was also a martial artist. He was a martial artist in New York City. Um, Actually, was friends with Timok and with Michael Jai White way back in the day, before before any of these guys became famous. He was friends with Timok before they ever made uh, Last Dragon.
Mhm.
And Luis was the real deal. He was a real martial artist. And for a period of time, he actually he basically did what we have in the movie, like 10 of the worst kids in some high school, and they contracted him to teach them martial arts